So jinxes aren't real, but hockey gods are. Okay, I got you. That makes
Jinxes
sense.
aren't real. Karma's real. But
Okay.
yeah, this wouldn't be like if you sat in the press box and said, boy, Eriksson Ek hasn't been hurt in weeks. And then he got hurt. That's a jinx. That wouldn't be a jinx. Like your words don't have anything to do with him getting hurt. But
Disagree.
if there's some reason that I do believe karma is real.
See,
Be
that's
a
the one thing I
positive
will say
person
about
and good things happen to
if
you.
karma is real, I just don't buy that Eriksson Ek's done. He's the perfect person. I don't
No, I
buy
know. I'm
anything
just
that
saying.
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Anthony is about to get on a jet plane and head across the ocean and go to Greece, where his son is getting married, and a nice little trek to his homeland in Italy. How excited are you? How nervous is Margot? Where are the dogs going to be during this entire time?
Well, Margot's nerve levels, as you can imagine, are high, but it's not that different from most mornings. But right now the dogs, in fact, just walked out the door. They are going to a friend's house to spend the next 12 days. They have no idea. I don't think it's going to be an easy departure, an easy drop off for Margot. So when she comes back, there might be some tears behind me. We'll see. But yeah, very excited. We are very lucky. We've got our entire family, all 10 of us with the significant others of our kids that are heading to Corfu, the island of Corfu, for AJ's wedding on Sunday. So we get a few days there together before the wedding. And then after the wedding, all of us, except for AJ and Ariana, his wife at that time, I don't know where they're going, actually. I think they're going on some short honeymoon thing, but the rest of us are going into the Puglia area of Italy to sample some olive oil, some wine, see a couple of ancient cities down in that part of Italy where I've never been. So I'm very excited. We are so fortunate. As I was just thinking about it this morning, it's been it's a long ride to get to this point in life, in a career, and with a family. And to think that the group of 10 of us are all going to be over in Greece and Italy at the same time together is pretty special.
Yeah, that is awesome. Maybe I'll head over just to the Italy part.
Well, you were invited, by the way,
I
and
know.
just opted against joining us. You were more than
Well,
welcome. And I tell you what, if you want to make it work, we'll make sure there's room at our table for you to sit at the wedding and really anywhere you want to tag along in Puglia.
I would just go do the Puglia part.
Yeah, because you're not
The
really into weddings,
no,
sentimental stuff, where
no.
you'd have to shake
Um,
AJ's hand.
yeah. I'll send him a congratulatory text. Yeah, no, that'll be amazing. I am envious of you. Uh, getting to go down to Italy too, and I'll be interested to see how you're able to handle all this without Michael Kenny telling you
I
what
know.
time to be at certain places. And
Well, I tell you what, I've been the planner for this trip, and
Mhm.
I always appreciate Michael Kenny's work and of course, Peter being along to show us the way. And as I was looking into these cities, we're gonna stay in Matera for a couple nights, Lecce for a couple nights, and Polignano Mare at the end. And each time I was just thinking that what I miss is gonna be the bus trip in to have Peter filling us in on the history of the city, and
yeah,
then arriving and having Michael Kenny have it all plotted out for us, that we're
yeah.
gonna walk the city, we're gonna see this, we're gonna go here, and it does make you appreciate all the
Here's your
little
free
things those
hour.
guys do. Right, exactly. And so I'm
Um,
excited about it. I think we have some great stuff planned, but it does
yeah.
not that I was short on appreciation for the work that those guys do, but each time you do it on your own, you realize just how lucky we are on those trips.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, if you don't know what we're talking about, Michael Kenny and Peter, that's Defined Destinations. That's who always organizes our summer trips. And man, you get back into town, and not about a month later, we're going to
Yeah,
back
going
over to
right
Italy. So
back.
it'll be fun. All right, let's talk about Wild Wrap Up Day. I don't know how much you got to see yesterday because I know you had a golf tournament, but But Bill Guerin and John Hynes conducted their end of year presser. It was about 45 minutes long. The biggest breaking news of that presser was that Philip Gustafsson is undergoing hip surgery and potentially won't be ready for the start of next season. If it is a torn labrum, he will not be ready. I can't imagine. This is relatively routine surgery for goaltenders in particular. Nicholas Backstrom had it. I believe Josh Harding had some hip surgeries here. And by the way, Nicholas, after his hip surgery, if I remember correctly, came back and performed really, really well. So I don't, this is not something to be overly alarmed about, but the
Other
timing,
than timing.
the timing, because if it's a 4-month recovery, who knows if he's ready for the start of the season. Bill Guerin gave no indication of that. He said he would know more post surgery. We'll see if he's forthcoming with that after the surgery. But it does change the complexion of a lot of things this offseason, because I've been saying to you all along that I was still convinced that the Wild were going to be able to, we're at least going to dangle Jesper Wallstedt out there this offseason in a trade for a number one center, which he says he's definitely motivated to do, the number one center part of that. But clearly, if Philip Gustafsson is not ready for the start of next season, I don't know how you could trade Wallstedt unless you're getting a true number one back in some sort of capacity. So most likely, Jesper's safe.
Well, yes, and it also probably means Philip Gustafsson is safe, because
Mhm.
I think there was a decent chance that if you were gonna go out and be able to find a number 1 center in the trade market, that one of the goaltenders was likely to be involved in that deal, just because they're the best commodity that the Wild have to trade right now, and it's a luxury the Wild have to have 2 of them, and I think this virtually guarantees that the 2 of them will both be in Wild sweaters at the start of next season. I can't imagine there are gonna be very many teams, unless this surgery turns out to be, hey, he's gonna be ready to go in a month and be training again in July, which, we don't know that, but if it's not that, I can't imagine a team saying, "We'll part with a number 1 center," with Philip Gustafsson being the main
Yeah.
part of a trade coming back. And if you're the Wild, it seems to make it really unlikely that Jesper Wallstedt would be the main piece in a trade going the other way.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing I will say about the whole goaltender trading a goaltender thing is I do think some fans have been confused. There is no reason the Wild have to trade either. It was either
Right.
always most likely going to be Volstad or nobody. There's no reason to, like, first of all, like, they had a great regular season tandem. The season's going up to 84 games. Rotating this year went really well. Gustafsson, until I guess he was hurt, had been playing really well this season. So there's no reason to trade any. It was just the Volstad part, because he's the big chip that might be able to get a number one center.
Exactly.
But there was no pressure at all to ever trade Gustafsson. So
Trade either goalie.
yeah. But I guess my point is that I get all these questions all the time about Gustafsson and his no move clause. That was never even probably going
Right.
to be something on the table, unless they just wanted to get out of his cap space.
Right,
But
but that's like, to me, I've had the same questions asked of me, and they're not under pressure to get out from under his cap space. I mean,
yeah.
number 1, they have some cap space. Number 2, his contract is certainly not a one that breaks the bank. It's a fair average value for his contract. And I think what people also forget is that there were points during this season where Philip Gustafsson was clearly the number 1. If the playoffs had been in February, Gus would have had the net in game 1, and really good chance he would have never given it away the way he was playing at that point. If the if it had been in December, it would have been Gus as the number 1. Then there were also points where Volstead was better. I think all we learned in this postseason is that Volstead is ready for big time. The lights weren't too bright in the playoffs for him,
Mhm.
and that just means that the Wild have 2 goaltenders that right now, on most teams in the NHL, would qualify as a number 1.
Absolutely. I'm
And
looking
at a
real quick.
value, I might add, that if you add them together, they're still below what a lot of teams are paying for their goaltending tandems.
Yeah, exactly. And here I'm just looking it up right now, but like from December 31st until February 27th, I think people forget that Wally was giving up 3, 4, 5, 6 goals a game. So he obviously had a really good year, but there was a point to what you're saying. There was he had a um for that stretch, he had a 875 save percentage and a goals against average of above 4. So it's not like
Right.
he had an
And
unbelievable year, you
and
know?
about that same time, Gus had like an 18-2-2 stretch or something like that.
Right.
I don't remember
So,
exactly what the numbers were, but he was
yeah.
among the league's best goaltenders
Yeah, I guess
for
I
about a
what I don't
2-month
get
period.
from fans' perspective is the motivation to get rid of Gus. I just think that there's a little confusion that they had to get rid of a goalie. They don't.
Right.
I mean, they have
It was
the same, you know.
This was nothing more than the 2 goaltenders that they had faith in both, and one was hot at the end of the year, so they rode him. I mean, look at
Yep.
some of the other teams in this playoff. I was watching the Montreal-Buffalo game last night, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's playing for Buffalo. There were stretches this season where he was the number 1. There were stretches in this playoff where
Yeah.
he was the starter, then Alex Lyon was a starter, and he got hot there. The most teams right now have 2 goaltenders on whom they can count. Look at Colorado. Wedgwood and Blackwood both played in the Minnesota series, and both were big parts of the win against Minnesota in the playoffs. So there
Yep.
are a few teams that have a clear one, Dallas being one of them, Tampa being one of them, Montreal right now being one of them. But even Jakob Dobich was not clearly the number 1 when this season started. It was Sam Montembeault. And
That's
Dobich took
crazy actually to
I
think
mean, think
about.
about it.
And
And
he
now
was in the 4 nations.
Right, and
Mm,
now Dobish is the guy they're riding, and, things change quickly, and they can also change back. There's
yeah.
nothing that says next season that at some point in Montreal, Montembeault is not gonna be the number 1 goaltender.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says in
Yeah.
Minnesota that next year there's gonna be a long stretch where Philip Gustafsson is the hot hand, and he's the guy on whom the Wild are
Yeah.
leaning.
Yeah, so, I guess, hopefully everybody understands essentially what we're seeing. Like, you don't trade Jesper unless you're getting a number 1 goalie, and there's no reason to ever trade, even when he was healthy, Gus, because the tandem works so marvelously well and is the reason why they got into the playoffs this year. And in an 84-game season, I don't see any reason why they'd go away from the rotation as long as Gus is healthy. So the big question is now on July 1, though, they are gonna have to get some really quality, you know, 2 just in case they don't see Gus for a month or 2 to start next year. So that is one thing because we're probably never seeing Halavai again. I don't see him returning to the Minnesota Wild. And so, they're going to have to really go out and find a goaltender. All right, let's talk about the press conference a little bit. Anthony, we'll talk about the unrestricted free agents and who we think we're going to be back. But the big thing is there were a couple messages in yesterday's presser. And again, I don't know if you got a chance to see a lot of
Yeah,
it,
I
but
heard all of it.
yeah, but Bill Guerin made it extremely clear that he was seething. Not even so much on the meltdown at the end of Game 5. He's still pissed about the Game 4 no-show at home on home ice. And the one thing that John Hynes volunteered for is something that you and I have talked about on this show throughout the season. Is what Games 3 and 4 showed him is an MO that has come with the character of this team, and that's during the regular season. There were so many times they would have a big emotional win that they would all show up for, and the next day lay an egg against a team from the East or a team that maybe was way below them on the standings, and it was driving me nuts. I didn't realize it was driving Hines as nuts as it was. But he said to me that's what he saw between games 3 and 4 is a team that put everything into game 3 and then just no showed in game 4. And this is one thing that he is going to, one, preemptively talk to the team about it when they all regather back in upcoming in September. But two, it's going to be something that throughout next season he is going to be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things there. One is that during the season, I had actually shared some numbers with John at one point just because it was a graphic I'd put together for a show. I have no idea when this was or what the game was, but it was saying the same thing. It was saying you looked at the Wild's record against teams that at that time were in the top 3 in their divisions, and the Wild had the best record in the NHL. If you looked at it against the teams that were currently in the playoffs, the Wild were number 2 in the NHL. Then if you looked at it against non-playoff teams, they were over 500, but I think they were 25th or 27th or something like that in the league, maybe 20th. But they weren't near the bottom, and the bottom line is it wasn't anywhere close to how well they had played against the best. And I think during the regular season, I don't know that that's necessarily that crazy for teams that are contenders because you get a desperation level that you can't just artificially create. When Colorado's coming to town, it brings out the best in your team. When the next night if Seattle's coming, you just can't duplicate that. But when you should have been able to do that is in a playoff series between games 3 and 4. There still should have been desperation on the part of the Wild, and instead, and I still will go back to, I think part of that's on the Wild. I still believe that a big part of that was Colorado. Same conversation. Game 3 up 2-0. They didn't have the desperation that they showed in game 4, the urgency, because I think right then they felt, holy cow, we're on the verge of letting this series get away if we don't show up and bring the absolute best. So I think it was a combination of Minnesota not being able to match what they did in game 3 and Colorado saying, now we're the team with a little desperation. And, so I think it works both ways in that. And I think it probably is a little bit of a microcosm of the Wild season where it was, and almost like when you look at the playoffs, it feels that way. It was everything into getting over that hump of the first round. And it was this team, we are absolutely have to win this series. And then it was almost like a sigh of relief. Like, okay, now we're in the second round. We achieved what we were hoping to achieve in this postseason. And I think now you'll see a team that, I know Billy talked about it yesterday, and we talked about it with him on a broadcast late in the season where I asked him about teams having to get to a level and fail and learn from that to come back. I think maybe this team now realized, like, look, the playoffs isn't just about everything into one series. Minnesota had the desperation in that series. Dallas did not. And Dallas was, hey, we've been to the conference finals 3 years in a row. This is one game at a time, level, even keel, where Minnesota came in like, we are going to win this series. And, that desperation wasn't the same against Colorado. So and I know fans might listen to, hey, these are professionals, but it's an emotional game. And there is a desperation level that you can't really artificially create. You have to have it. And the Wild didn't have it. I didn't feel really throughout that whole Colorado series other than in game 3.
You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, make sure you download the Onyx Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the Onyx Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. Onyx Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download Onyx Fish on the App Store or visit onyxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch.
Hi, this is Anthony LaPanta. I wanted to introduce you to a product a lot of my friends have been using lately called Lucy. Lucy is a premium tobacco-free nicotine pouch that comes in a variety of strengths and flavors, so there's an option for just about everyone. What makes it stand out is the flavor experience, especially with Lucy Breakers, which have a built-in flavor capsule you crack for an instant extra burst. That's what makes Lucy different. It's the only pouch delivering long-lasting, on-demand flavor, giving you a unique experience every time. Get 20% off your first order at lucy.com/worstseats with a promo code. And if you don't want to wait, check out the store locator to find a Lucy near you and grab it today. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every customer is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Yeah, and I still think they got screwed by the league with having a rush there just for TV purposes. Again, I think it's absurd that at Friday at 11:59 p.m. they don't even know that officially that they're getting on a flight in 12
and
hours.
That they're going to play in 36 hours.
You have to prepare for a playoff series, not just the coaches tactically, but emotionally to move on. And it was like that game 1, it was almost like they just showed up for a playoff series, like a normal road trip. And it just felt like they weren't prepared. And I don't think they really ever caught up until the 3 days off.
Probably the same for Colorado. When you look at the way that game was played, I mean, neither team was. I mean, it was a 9-6 game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the way either one of these teams play hockey. And the way that game went back and forth, you could tell it was two teams that were just not in normal playoff hockey mode, to say the least.
The other thing we learned about that playoff series in Game 5, here's your Kevin Gork preposterous statement of the war thing, is that if you're going to jump out to a 3-0 lead on Colorado, don't do it early because, man, you're giving them all the time in the world to rally back. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Do it in the third period, make it 3-0.
Right, yeah. That was the argument he and I always had, where he tried to convince me that a 2-0 lead was harder to hold than a 1-0 lead.
But I will say,
and I was like, Kevin, you could, if you wanted, if that was the truth, teams could avoid being ahead 2-0 by just not trying to score when it was 1-0. So would you have rather been up 2-0 instead of 3-0? It just
I guess my only point is there was I was on with Tom Reed between periods, and I said it 16 times during the interview. If you listen back, there is a lot of game left in this, and I remember talking to. As I was walking to Tom Reed during the first intermission, every single Colorado writer was on Marriott.com booking hotel rooms for game 6 in Minnesota. And I walked by all of them. I'm like, there is a lot of game left. I'm just telling you, don't make sure you could cancel that by midnight because, and even Mark Lazarus to my left throughout the game, I was saying there is a lot of game left.
What's interesting, and I'm sure you're the same. I haven't been anywhere. Well, almost. It's I can't say literally, but I can say figuratively. I haven't been anywhere since the season ended where I haven't been asked about that game and the way it got away from the Wild. And I have, as I think back about it, I remember when I was watching the game when Minnesota got out of the second period down or still up 3-1, I really felt at that point, all right, now they're going to get reorganized here. They're going to reset. And I thought they did. And I thought they came out and played really well in the third period. It was really just the last 5 minutes where it got away from them. And that's the part that I think has guys frustrated, because it isn't like they sat back for 40 minutes. In the second period, they maybe got a little conservative, but it was a Colorado push too that was similar to what we saw from them in Game 4. And they got out of it. They escaped it still up by 2. And I thought, all right, now they're going to be able to settle this down. And for most of the third period, it looked like they would. Now, I don't know if they're going to win the series anyway, if they win that game, especially not with Ek and Brodin coming back. But you just never know if you're able to force that 6th game, how the momentum and the pressure can change in a series.
Yeah, and that's what bothered me the most about Game 5, because I thought the first 15 minutes of that period, they played a perfect defensive game, and then just really careless, sloppy mistakes by 3 or 4 veterans. And by the way, none of their top 6 guys. Like, I know it was fashionable to rip on their top 6 guys, after that game, but it was all it was all veterans that should know better, and this is where they do have to learn. Let's move along, Anthony. The search for a number 1 center. Bill Guerin made it extremely clear that even without potentially trading Jesper Wallstedt, that there's always a way. I know, some of us might kind of roll our eyes at that statement because, in my perspective, I've covered the team 21 years and I haven't seen them with a number 1 center. No offense, Wes Walls. But, that's just reality. So it's not going to be easy. And the other thing that I do think that makes it hard, Anthony, is that we know everybody wants a center and everybody has cap space. So it makes it even harder because the Wild have traded so many chips away. The Quinn Hughes trade, obviously, they traded 4 equivalent number 1 picks. And they, in the Eurotrek trade, traded a bunch of picks. They essentially threw away Marat Husnadinov. So they don't have a ton of assets now if you don't include Wallstedt. There's Urov, there's Stramel, there's guys like Adam Benek, Bobby Brink, whatever. Then there's core pieces, like the Folignos, the Hartmans, the Middletons. There's Joel Eriksson-Ek. Like, if Austin Matthews cost and you had to throw an Eriksson-Ek in, do you do it, considering that Austin would be your number 1 center on the number 1 unit? Like, there's a lot of things to change. Like, there could be some interesting moves to put this together. But the one thing he made it clear is that he has shown fans and media and his team that he's willing to be bold and won't, quote, sit on his hands. And he made it again. He said, our window is now. And when you have an open window, you don't keep it 3/4 open. So this is what we were saying all year long, Anthony, is that you don't swing for Quinn Hughes if you don't have a second bullet in the chamber to try to go make another swing. And clearly that wasn't able to happen before the trade deadline, but he is motivated to make that happen this offseason.
Yeah, and I know that right now fans are gonna look and say that, well, Colorado was deeper and the Wild didn't have enough depth, but I refuse to second guess the moves at the deadline because at the time, and you and I both said at the
Yep.
time that it wasn't worth overpaying because you might take yourself out of the market for the right fit come this offseason. So, yeah, I mean, now the
And the
question
other thing
is
is, like, this isn't also second guessing. Like, nobody was traded. Like, yeah,
right,
Kadri was traded, but Kadri was a unique case. He was only going back to Colorado where he won a cup. But Trocheck wasn't traded.
right.
Thomas wasn't traded. Austin wasn't traded. Hughes, Easter.
Because
None of these
everybody
guys. Yeah.
agreed that the asking
Yeah.
prices were too high, and I think that was so, now the challenge is that, and obviously the big deal is to get Quinn Hughes extended this summer, because if you extend Hughes for 3 years, now your window is 3 to 4 years. If you don't, that window isn't. I just don't believe that the window is as far open if you don't get that done. And I don't know what, I mean, we'd both be guessing if we were to say, is Quinn going to re-sign here or not? He certainly seemed happy here. He certainly seems to believe in Billy Guerin, but there would be a part of me that wonders, will he wait to see what that move is for a number one center before he decides to commit for 3 years? I don't know. And would it be easier for Billy to make the deal for the number one center if he knew that he had Quinn locked up and therefore had some cost certainty as well for what it was gonna take to keep Quinn here? I think there's a lot of pieces in play here, and the way that, when you look at the way that the trade market is likely gonna have to be the path for the Wild to go, because there just aren't free agent centers out there that are gonna make the kinda impact on a roster that we're talking about. This might have to be a multiple deal kind of thing. Like, we'll make this deal with this team to pick up the kind of asset that we need to then turn and flip it to the deal that'll make sense for another team, because the fit might not be straight your assets for that number one center. It wouldn't shock me at all if it was a complex sequence of trades or moves that are made to get the right piece for Minnesota heading into next year.
Yeah, and there are other issues on this team. Like, I didn't love the Wild's bottom six in this series, Anthony, from a speed standpoint. Like, I really think they got to get faster down there. I know they've added a lot of physicality down there, but there were so many times in Game 5 where the fourth line was on the ice and just like a puck would come out to the neutral zone, they just couldn't get to it. And
Well, that's true, but remember, it's part of that's matchups too. Now you're going to have to go through Colorado. Their bottom six was built differently, because if you look back at the Dallas series, Minnesota won that series because their bottom six was better,
mhm,
and that series was more of a fight for every inch, grind it out,
yeah,
heavier series.
this,
You're going
you
to
know what
have to
this
go through.
reminds me of? Like, I know you're not an NBA guy, but I watched Game 7 yesterday of the Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Like, every team now is going to have to just design their teams to beat Wemby, and
Yeah.
now I kind of think every team needs to design their teams to beat Colorado.
Well, it depends, because let's say that your playoff path is going through Dallas and Vegas. Well, that's very different. It's a totally different challenge. And
Mhm.
I thought what Minnesota did this year at the deadline was create some flexibility where they could play maybe a smaller, faster bottom six. But throughout this series, they seemed convinced to stick with the older, heavier, more physical team because it was what beat Dallas. And, in hindsight, maybe would it now, this is all, it's different because they didn't have all their weapons. If you have Eriksson Ek, it gives your
Yeah.
lineup some more flexibility. But, maybe that's the way you go about it, is you try to make sure that you've got a third line that's heavier and a fourth line that can play with some speed, so that in a given matchup, you see either one of them more often. Maybe you've got a line that's built more like a Yurov, a Brink, and a Tarasenko, and then
Mhm.
another line that's the Folignos and McCarron type player, where some nights it's the heavier line you're leaning on, some nights it's the more speed and skill line, because Colorado's bottom six was outstanding in this series,
Yeah.
particularly late, and they were not what you'd call your typical heavy veteran bottom six kind of team.
Yeah, I as you're saying this, the one thing like Bobby Brink needs to have a big summer. Like, they gave up a lot for him if you include what they gave up for Juracek. And he came here and he had 2 goals and 2 assists in 13 games, averaged a shot a game and only played 4 playoff games. And in his last playoff games, he was not good. To the point where they didn't play him again. And I think that he needs to have a big offseason because he could add that type of speed and skill to that bottom six. The other issue I thought in that series, Anthony, was still size on the back end. I know we talk about this a lot, and I don't know if there's an easy way to fix it because obviously Faber and Hughes are back. The question is both Spurgeon and Brodin back? Because Brodin has no trade protection. Spurgeon has modified no trade protection. And then you're back at your third pair. Hunt might have played himself into the lineup. Middleton might have played himself into a potential trade. So that takes away some size. Is Bogosian back? He's oft injured. So I don't know how you fix this, but I just felt like even like that Jack Drury goal, like Jared Spurgeon's all over him, but can't tie up his stick. And it's not like Drury's a huge guy. But I don't know. It just continues to be a problem, I think, for the Wild in the playoffs.
Yeah, although, again, let's go back to the series that they won against Dallas. That was one of the big keys to their victory is they kept Dallas away from the front of the net all series long. And that was when they were healthy because you had Brodin in the lineup. So, you can – I think there are ways to defend other than just sheer size. Some teams have done it with size, but some teams have done it with the combination of skating and size. And, Faber can play a heavy enough game. Brodin, I think, can play a heavy enough game to have success. I think, yes, in this last series, it was a factor that hurt him, but a part of that was injury to Brodin forced Jake Middleton to play in an elevated role where, I think he was at his best when he was on the third set this year. And that third set certainly was sturdy enough with Middleton and Bogosian when everybody was healthy. So I think it comes down to matchups. There are times where, yes, having a little more size, but in this case, what I think hurt them more than anything was losing Brodin's skating ability against a very fast Colorado team.
Yep, no, without a doubt. I did ask Bill Guerin about Brodin and Eriksson Ek, and just the fact that every time they are out of the lineup, we see how absolutely invaluable they are, but yet they're always seemingly out of the lineup at the worst possible times. And
isn't that crazy when you think about Joel Eriksson Ek? If you look at how many games he's missed, the number is small.
Yeah.
But every time it's at the most critical point of the season. I mean,
it's been 3 postseasons now.
Yeah, and he had 4 years in a row where his games were at like 77 or 78 during the season. So he's only missing 4 or 5 games, but then would miss all but 19 seconds of a playoff series. And it just is, I don't know who he irritated in the karma and the gods of hockey world, but it certainly seems like there's somebody up there that just doesn't want to see him in a playoff series.
So jinxes aren't real, but hockey gods are. Okay, I got you.
Jinxes aren't real. Karma's real. But yeah, this wouldn't be like if you sat in the press box and said, boy, Eriksson Ek hasn't been hurt in weeks. And then he got hurt. That's a jinx. That wouldn't be a jinx. Like your words don't have anything to do with him getting hurt.
Disagree.
But if there's some reason that I do believe karma is real.
See, that's
be a positive person.
The one thing I will say about
to you.
If karma is real, I just don't buy that Eriksson Ek's done. He's the perfect person. I don't buy anything.
I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but I emit positive vibes, and most of the time, good things seem to happen around me.
But it is crazy because this is obviously this year. Last year, he missed a month and a half, 2 months before, and came back right before the playoffs with Kaprizov. 2023 out for the entire playoffs. The 1 year against Vegas, 21, where he was playing on a bad knee. Like, it's really a shame. And same thing with Broads. I mean, you remember Game 7 of that 21 season. Right. All of a sudden, he was lost early in the game.
When you look at the way these two got hurt this year, it's so typical of the play where Eriksson Ek got hurt is, if you would have said, out of all the scrums in front of the net, the collisions, that this is the play where you're going to lose a second round playoff series from your most important center, you would have said, there's no way. And Brodin blocking the shot, he's one of the leading shot blockers in the playoffs heading up to that moment. And we see so many guys. Kirill Kaprizov blocked a shot in almost the exact same fashion. And for him, it knocked his skate blade out. For Brodin, it ends up with a broken bone and puts him on the sidelines.
Well, yeah, then I'm watching last night. Alex Tuck blocks a shot that goes right off his skate. If it's probably 2 inches higher, it does what it probably did to Brodin. So, but the one thing to end that on, Billy, is he basically admitted to what you said. It's like he just feels like they're a much better team. He'd rather have them with them than without them. And but I still think that if you can get a number one center this year, and all of a sudden a team says, all right, we can't have Wallstat, but would you give us some Eriksson Ek? I think you have to consider it. I kind of wonder. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, I think what Bill Guerin has shown is he's going to consider anything, because there are a lot of these deals.
You know what an NHL referee asked me the other day, Anthony? Here's one for you. This will probably get aggregated. An NHL ref asked me the other day, would you trade Kaprizov straight up for Austin?
No.
All right. This is an interesting, all of a sudden it kind of boggled my mind.
Yeah. But I mean, what I was going to say with Billy is that there have been some deals that he's made that, he's a guy that's willing to take a chance. He's not afraid of being second guessed. He's not cautious. He's not careful. And I think really as he heads into a season like this, where, as I was talking earlier, let's assume that he either has or knows that he's got a shot to have Quinn Hughes in the fold for, let's just say, a minimum of the next 3 to 4 years, because that kind of matches up with where you've got the rest of the core signed. During 3-4 years, during that period that you're still going to have Brodin, Spurgeon, Faber. You're still going to have Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov, and Boldy. Some of those guys are longer than that, but you've got the core of your team, and you've got your goaltenders. So if you know that you've got Hughes in your back pocket or a deal that can be done there, I think you have to, and I'm sure he will, like almost anything would be on the table at that point. If the right deal was there, I don't think you're going to see a guy that's going to be afraid to say, well, boy, this leaves me open for second guessing if I'm willing to pull the trigger on a trade that sends a player that's been here a long time, that's considered to be a part of our core, whatever the definition of that player might be.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Anthony LaPanta. I recently made my first visit ever to a stretch lab. I stopped at the location out in Maple Grove and had a great stretch practitioner named Tom who was terrific. I can't wait to get back. As you try to fight the aging process, which I'm right there with you, trying to battle it, flexibility is one of the big keys. I felt great after my first stretch, and I'm planning to go back weekly. There are 10 locations all across the Twin Cities. I highly recommend checking out Stretch Lab.
You've heard me for years talk about my Connecticut water treatment system in my house. Well, many homeowners don't realize how much hard or poor quality water affects your daily life. Issues include cloudy water, bad taste, buildup on fixtures, dry skin, appliance wear, everything. Well, I have your solution, and it's Aquarius Home Services. They are your authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Connecticut systems provide worry-free water throughout your entire home. Systems right now start at $9.95 per month for the first 3 months. It's $9.95 per month for the first 3 months. Their technicians will come to your home and provide a free in-home water quality testing analysis. Aquarius handles everything from your testing to your installation. One call and your problem is solved. You can enjoy spotless dishes, softer clothes, smoother, softer skin and hair, worry-free drinking water right from your faucet. That means no more plastic water bottles, no more water cans, everything. You'll be surprised also how little salt it uses. Visit right now or book your services at AquariusHomeservices.com. That's AquariusHomeservices.com, earning the right to be recommended. That's Aquarius Home Services. And don't forget to tell them that Russo sent you.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left in the show, Anthony. Let's go through the roster a little bit. It really will be interesting. So the Wild right now, the one thing that Billy said yesterday is he likes his team. He'd love them all back, but obviously that's not totally feasible. They have about $15 million in cap space. They have 8 guys that they essentially have to sign. That includes Brink and that includes Brink, that includes Damon Hunt, but then that includes, players that could potentially make the roster like Hunter Haight. But then they're going to have to sign some guys, whether it's bringing back their guys or not. So let's just quickly go through the lineup. Obviously, Carill's back, Matt Boldy's back, Eriksson Ek, we just talked about, 5.25. His no move now also becomes a 10-team no trade too. So he has a no move, but that just means just for the minors or buyouts or things like that. But he can technically be traded now. Vladimir Tarasenko, who we talked about on last show, has been hobbling around. Billy did admit that he was really banged up. He's an unrestricted free agent. Nick Foligno, unrestricted free agent. Matt Zuccarello, unrestricted free agent. McCarron, Johansson, Fabry, Bogosian, and Petrie. These are still the UFAs. Anthony, if you had a guess, I think Zuccarello is back. The question is Nick Foligno willing to take a, really cheap, this is a guy that's made $4.5 million. Is he willing to go down to a league minimum type deal? I don't know. Tarasenko, same thing. He would have to take an unbelievable haircut. Johansson, I don't think he's coming back at 800. So those are going to be the big ones. Then Michael McCarron is somebody that Billy told me, off the podium yesterday, he really thinks they could afford him. But I'm telling you, I'm supposed to talk to his agent in the next couple of days. I think that Michael McCarron, somebody's going to throw a bunch of money at him. I just wonder if he's willing to just take much less here to stay in a position where he really fit in well versus his first huge payday with potential security.
Yeah, I would guess that somebody else is going to offer him more than what the Wild can. And, a lot of the speculation really depends on what the deal is for a number one center, because I think that will dictate how much flexibility you have. I agree with you that I think Zuccarello wants to come back and the Wild would love to have him back. I think Johansson would
I bet
stay
you
here.
Zuki gets like 2 years times 3. 2 years, $6 million deal. That's kind of what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I could see, and I would, if I were the Wild, I think I would take that and jump at that to have a player like Zuki back. Johansson, maybe you're able to, if you were willing to say to him, "Hey, we'll give you 2 years," maybe then the AAV comes down a little bit. I don't know that there would be, somebody would probably pay him more than what he had, but would it be a better fit
Definitely.
for him? I don't know. He seems to love it here. Uh, If you start to look at the way your lineup is built, realistically, it might come down to just 2 out of 3 of those guys, meaning Zuccarello, Tarasenko, and Johansson. I just don't know if there's room in your lineup to have all 3
Yeah.
of them back again. If you add a number one center and a healthy Eriksson Ek and everybody starts to trickle down. That's why, to me, McCarron seems less likely, and part of that is because I think unless you know what your deal is for the number one guy and you know what that number is,
Yeah.
you'd hate to take yourself out of the market in a certain trade just because you've spent some money on McCarron, who I think we can all agree is a valuable player, but he's on a contending team. He isn't in your top 6. And as far as Nick Foligno goes, I haven't talked to Nick, but I gotta believe if he was, I know he made a couple comments as he was leaving, just along the lines of, "I'm not sure that I want to play another year." I would bet if he wants to play anywhere, it's alongside his brother. And if you're at that point in your career and you just think, "I want one more season with my brother on a team that has a chance to win," I could see him being willing to, if the alternative is retirement, then to make $1 million to play for one
Yeah.
more year would certainly seem
I think the
to
big
be
thing with
within the realm
Nick,
of possibility.
as he was alluding to, is is the working out. That's usually what it comes down to. Do you want to work out like a professional athlete? The problem is that he lives right next door to Marcus, who needs a workout partner. So my guess is Marcus gets him to return. The question is he willing to return at 900? 50 grand or something. I don't know. I mean, that's a huge haircut. Are you willing to do that, just to
It
play for
is,
your
but
brother?
if you think about it, like if your debate is retirement and
Yep.
$0 or one more year of hockey and $1 million,
Yeah.
there's worse ways to make $1 million than playing one more season on a contending team with your brother.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then obviously Bobby Brink, he'll get his RFA qualifying offer or a little more. they'll work on that with his agent, Ben Hankinson. Damon Hunt needs a new contract. Again, these won't break the bank. But the question then on the blue line is Bogosian and Petrie. Do you want to upgrade? Are you willing to take Bogosian back, who had an unbelievable amount of similar injuries this year? Or do you want to, go get somebody that might be sturdier? I always say it's, I know Billy loves him. His brother works in the front office as well, Aaron. You just think if Zach wants to come back and is willing to take a league minimum deal, it probably happens. But I do think that his injuries were a big issue this year.
Well, they were a big issue. I think you have to trust the player. Like, will an
Yep.
offseason get him a chance to rest, rehab, and come back healthy? And if so, and if he says, I'm good to go, and we're assuming that he wants to come back and that he wants to come back to Minnesota, which I think is a fair assumption, but it is an assumption. It's not,
Yeah.
we don't know this for a
I
fact.
know he's won a cup, but when you have to be out of your last potential NHL game because of an injury, I'm sure that's going to leave a bitter taste in his mouth all offseason if that was it. And
Right, and
I guess
that's why I'm saying is I think
yeah.
he'd probably be likely to come back, and as we've talked before, if he's your 6 or 6.5 type defenseman, where if you can build a defensive core around him, where maybe you can spot him in and out of the lineup with a little more rest over the course of the season, I think he can still be a valuable part of a defensive core.
Yeah. Marcus Foligno could be traded to 16 teams. Ryan Hartman to 24 teams. 21 teams. So those are everybody else has in the forward group has no trade protection. So Yakov Trenin, none. Nico Sturm, none. Yurov, obviously none. On the blue line, Faber has no trade protection. He's going nowhere. Hughes has no trade protection. He's going nowhere. Spurgeon has a 10-team no trade. Brodin, no trade protection. Middleton, this is an interesting one. Middleton can be traded to 16 other teams, Anthony, but not until July 1. And usually trades happen around the draft. He has a no move until July 1. So he might be safe there. And then obviously we've talked about the goalies, Wallstedt and Gustavsson as the full no move. So there you go. That's the roster. We'll talk in the coming days and weeks when Anthony returns from Greece about some of the number one centers they could potentially go after and all that type of stuff, Anthony. Right now, we're going to be off the rest of the month while you're in Europe, unless there's an emergency podcast, which you are never invited to anyway.
No, I'm not even going to bring my microphone with me on this trip. But if I uncover any news while I'm over there, I'll just get a hold of Alex, our producer, and we'll do an emergency pod from an olive grove somewhere in either Greece or Italy, and I'll just text it to you when I'm done.
Yeah, I do expect some FaceTimes from the wedding, from the olive groves, from the wineries, all the things that I wish I
I'm
would
excited
have.
about the trip. It's going to be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
We'll share some good stories when we get back.
And I will be at the conference final, starting actually game 5. I'm actually taking the week off. I am filling in for PA, and I'll be on with Barrero on Wednesday. And then I'll filling in for PA next Tuesday. Then I leave for the conference final Wednesday, and then I'll be at the Cup final as well. But we'll be having plenty of coverage in the Athletic over the next couple months with my partner Joe Smith and I, and then we'll be doing a lot of podcasts here on Talk North. Thanks to our incredible sponsors. Have a great trip, Anthony. Safe travels. Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, Stretch Labs, and Lucy Nicotine Pouches. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going